Welcome, shadows and scholars. Step right into the muted, shivering dark of Launderia. We're diving straight into a grim, cautionary folktale for this explainer. It's a story of unchecked power, the absolute death of art, and a hubris so heavy it'll drag you right down into the mud. Let's pull back the curtain on this gothic nightmare and dissect the exact anatomy of a royal downfall.
Our prologue starts right at the cliff edge, the point of no return. The king of Launderia finally reached out to grasp the humanity a brilliant upstart playwright was offering him, but his timing? An absolute tragedy. He reached for salvation, but his fingers met only the freezing void of his own pride, a fatal slip, and he left the door wide open for something much, much darker to step inside.
Let's track exactly how this corruption took hold. Once that pride left a king completely hollow, the entity we know as the Obsidian Doctor didn't just watch from his mountain anymore. No, step 1, he leaned directly into the king's shadow. Step 2, a violet frost, this supernatural creeping cold, began crawling straight up the king's spine. And finally, step 3, a malicious spirit, born of centuries of stagnant rule and unharvested grief, just poured right into the monarch's empty vessel.
And the physical toll? It's pure, visceral horror. The king's very life force transfigured. His blood actually turned into a viscous, oily decay. It was the exact same rot that had been haunting the valley outside his walls. All that fiery ambition, those soaring heights of Marlowe's verse that once lit up the realm, violently, suddenly snuffed out by this spreading dark magic. The man was gone. Only the shell remained.
Part 1. Throne of Black Bile.
So, the king is gone, but what about his court? Think of what once was, the golden throne, a radiant, brilliant seat of power. But under that creeping violet frost of the Obsidian Doctor, the gold literally rots away. It becomes a mass of black bile and iron. Just picture a throne that is actually sweating, a decaying stone monument to entropy, where a hollowed-out king sits over a completely muted, shadowed realm.
But the rot didn't stop at the stone. It warped the very sound of Launderia. The king used to speak with the elegant, refined tongue of the university wits, right? The absolute pinnacle of sophisticated debate. But now, from his stolen mouth spills this guttural, insect-like noise. Literally the buzzing of 1,000 fly wings. It's an incredibly unsettling reality. Intellect decaying into mindless, parasitic consumption.
And from that buzzing, infested mouth comes a chilling decree. The time for sophisticated art has ended, and the time for the great silence has begun. That is the sound of an entire culture suffocating. The vibrant enlightenment of the valley was officially dead, entirely replaced by the heavy, creeping dread of the Obsidian Doctor.
This philosophical death literally manifested in the king's anatomy. His lungs used to be filled with the warm, vibrant air of theater and human connection, but the doctor's entropy turned them into starfinders of cold metal. He inhales the desperate breath of his subjects, and he exhales this toxic violet mist. A mist so foul, it literally wilts the vibrant banners of the realm right off their poles.
Part 2. The Great Clock of Hollowed Souls.
So what happens to the everyday subjects trapped under this suffocating rule? Well, this is how the thing wearing the king views his people now. He doesn't look out from his bleeding throne and see a flock to guide or protect. No, he sees only overripe fruit hanging from a scorched tree. It's a twisted, necrotic judgment, rotting remnants of life just waiting to drop into the dirt.
And this twisted worldview builds into an architectural nightmare. The great circular playhouses of Launderia, they used to be vessels for order, turning the messy energy of the people into art. But under the Great Silence, they are rebranded as the Great Clock of Hollowed Souls, horrifying instruments of a mortal countdown. The people are lured in, and every single heartbeat of the audience is coldly tallied, ticking down toward a final, inevitable debt to the Obsidian Doctor.
Part 3. The Playwright's Terrifying Truth. Just imagine standing in the damp, muddy pit of that circular playhouse next to the upstart playwright himself, Shakespeare. As that heartbeat countdown echoes around him, a horrifying realization hits. The shadow had not been tamed by poetry. All that beautiful blank verse, all the attempts to bind human darkness into a neat theatrical narrative, it had utterly failed. The darkness wasn't beaten, it was just waiting.
And here is the punchline to this incredibly grim joke.
The Obsidian Doctor didn't care about the artists. He bypassed them entirely. He bypassed the scholars, the mud, the bear pits, and went straight for the ultimate prize. It found a king weak enough to wear. The monarch's massive pride made him a hollow puppet, for the darkness to slip on like a velvet glove.
Part 4. Ashes of the Crown.
So the Obsidian Doctor, speaking through the buzzing mouth of the stolen king, turns his hollow gaze to us and asks one final question. The old structures have rotted into the bone. Will you cling to the corpse of the king or find your value in the ashes of his crown? Do you stay loyal to a dead system that has become a monster, or do you try to survive in the chaotic ruin it leaves behind? That is the true cost of power. I'll leave you in these Gothic shadows to ponder your answer. Stay curious and beware the violet frost.